I work with an incredible organisation called Word Forest. And Word Forest is run by a beautiful couple called Tracy and Simon West. And they had me come and write a poem for them as part of the Hot Poet Project because trees grow 10 times faster in equatorial countries. And it's not often spoken about in the mainstream, and it needs to be made clear that the most advantageous impact that can be made to climate change is if we educate black and brown women in equatorial countries. What's happening in Kenya is Word Forest is planting trees and building classrooms and encouraging Kenyan women to plant trees instead of burn trees for charcoal. So this is a massive change. And my poem is dedicated to them, these mothers of the forest. On her lap, wrapped in a bright-coloured kanga, her hands at rest, one on top of the other, folded like wings of an African dove, calm, gentle. Mother of the forest, red earth in the creases of her palm, under her nails, at rest. Her hands that cup seedlings, tree children, to whom she is custodian, adoptive parent to an ailing mother in fever due to a climate dangerous for all life who walk upon her skin. She is mother too, 25 and in school, to learn a new compassion, an earth connection her ancestors would not have needed to know because their bond with the land is sealed in their songs and dances and stories about vegetation that ate the sunlight and exhaled the food for our lungs. Fables about elephants and lions who lived among them, respecting each other's space, free from colonial price tags that weighed heavy about their necks, their fur and tusks for 200 years. Her name is Grace, and she has walked for 2 hours to come and learn, to see how her homeland can be looked at through enlightened eyes, to see herself as Wangari Maathai sees her, as the neck that turns the head, as the straightest spine that does not bow lightly and carries a nation in the swoop of her determined chin. You cannot enslave a mind that knows itself, that values itself, that understands itself. And when you educate a woman, you empower a community. These are words like fertile food for Grace. So Grace eats with her fingers and is fed, and tells stories her grandmother told under the last fig tree, as ancient as memory, that survived a genocide, and tells stories about the animals that could speak. And Grace plants a seed that remembers a lost culture, discovers her own hidden genius for agricultural business, enjoying writing and maths. She has carried water and pounded maize meal, and now holds a pencil for the first time. And her eyes hold an ocean of green spreading into the future. She feeds her children with rich food from her own garden, whose soil she turned with her own hands, with a humble bow in her back, thanking the ailing mother. She sows into the mouth of each open row, and she is proud that the food she feeds baby, wrapped tight to the beat of her heart, is ugali and plantain that she fed from her own garden, fed from her own mouth into theirs, to help them remember that they are ancestors returned, that they are children of the soil too. Thank you.
Zena Edwards. Hi there, my name is Liv Torc and I am a hot poet, obviously. I'm really glad I thought up that name all those months ago. So I want to take you back to June 2019 at Glastonbury. And I found myself standing in a muddy field, listening to dystopian doom poetry about climate change. And it left me and the thousands of people watching sinking further into the mud. Fortunately, I was with my good friend, poet and musician Chris Redmond, who had recently been approached after a Tongue Fu gig, which is the spoken word and improvised music night he runs, by Dr. Mikhail Nachmani from the London School of Economics. Now, Mikhail's job at the time was she was in charge of the world's database for the most polluting companies. And her job was to convince shareholders to stop investing in fossil fuels and start investing in renewables. When Chris asked Mikhail how that was going, expecting the answer to be bad, she said, "Better than I ever thought possible." Now, that's not the story we're used to hearing, is it? Mikhail went on to explain the incredible challenge the amazing minds at the London School of Economics and around the world are experiencing, writing papers about climate solution and action that the media never see, let alone report. Now, sort of on the flip side to this, at the time, just before Glastonbury Festival, I had released and written a poem called The Human Emergency, which was my response as a mother of 2 small children to the constant doomsday clock climate of fear and grief that was leaving parents and everyone paralysed. Now, the poem didn't just get a lot of views, it went viral. But more importantly than that, it was a catalyst for action, used in protests in Australia and Philadelphia, shared to eminent climate professors at Oxford University. It instilled in me a belief that I had a voice powerful enough to cut through and create positive change. So, armed with the human emergency and our connection with Mikhail, who agreed to come on board with us as our chief scientist, Chris and I manifested Hot Poets, which, as you can see, is a project about powerfully communicating climate change science and action through spoken word, the real stories of ingenuity and hope that we don't get to see. We took 12 of the UK and South Africa's leading spoken word artists and matched them with scientists, educators, engineers from 12 frontline climate change organisations, including the Met Office, the London School of Economics, Grantham Institute, the Royal Society for the Protection of the Birds and the Whale and Dolphin Conservation. Now, Zena and Francesca Beard and myself are 3 of these poets, and we were tasked with writing scientifically accurate, accessible and engaging poems about our partner organisations. And they were all released 1 a day throughout COP. They were professionally filmed, released 1 a day throughout COP26. And you can watch all of the films on the Hot Poets website, and there are some absolute crackers. And they cover everything from the regreening of the Sinai Peninsula to forest school education on the national curriculum, to climate change litigation, to the intrinsic value of whale poo on the ocean's ecosystems. It's really true. And thanks to the Met Office, me and Chris Redmond ended up taking the Hot Poets into the belly of COP26, where we shared the project on the Science Pavilion there and the United Nations Resilience Pavilion to politicians, scientists and UN delegates. All that from one idea in a muddy field. So Hot Poets, the films, have now been seen over 150,000 times online. They've been performed at live Tongue Fu gigs and on national radio, and we're currently embarking on an ambitious participation programme online participation programme and schools programme, which is all about poetically exploring new sparks and inventions from around the world. Now, the response to Hot Poets and the poems has galvanised in me a belief that spoken word and poetry can go further, deeper, more imaginatively into the climate change fight, that it can engage more people more positively. And most importantly, it can change useless despair into action and agency. Now, it is my great pleasure to be able to sort of bring you 3 of the poems from the project here to TEDxLondonWomen. You've already heard Zena's amazing poem about the women in Kenya who grow trees along the equator for the Word Forest organisation. Now, for my poem, I was a little closer to home. And I was matched with Somerset Wildlife Trust and Somerset County Council for the Adapting the Levels project, which is all about preparing and protecting Somerset from the devastating impact of rising sea levels and river flooding. Now, this is climate change in action, happening right here in the global north. Not sort of a faraway threat, but a reality of the now. So I'm now going to kind of shift in from talk to poetry mode. It's very subtle. Okay, I'm a poet now. I've got looser hips. So for the people, for the Somerset levels and all the people who are trying to protect them when you know the water's coming. When I was a kid, I loved mucking about in rivers, balancing on rocks, holding my socks, playing poo sticks over rusty bridges, cheering on my soggy steed as it got tangled up in ragwort weed. In Somerset, where I live now, we know the water's coming. We are climate canaries, ever-changing, writhing eels, waiting for the day of mass migration when our childhood playground will rise up to reclaim the summer lands that we have borrowed from the sea. Every winter, to remind us, the sky falls down, to paint the fields with its reflection, a mirror for the moon to check her smiling before she blows a wobbly kiss up the Bristol Channel to the sea into the plastic playground at Atlanta's door. Yes, we are all waiting for Poseidon's knock. We are a world waiting, with our hearts and sandbags breaking. Centuries ago, my ancestors tried to shape this land, change the course of the Parrett and the Brew, built their banks and edges higher than the hedges, peeled back the soil to reveal the decomposing teeth of bare peat, now belching out enough carbon to swallow the sky. On the high ground above Avalon, scientists gather like storm clouds, magicians of the Mendips with their sand trays and soil samples, leading by reason and example, raising their weather-vane fingers to predict the coming floods. In their minds, they see the waters crest the Quantocks, charge down streets and over doorsteps, swamping sitting rooms and sofas in a tide of pesticides and other people's floaters. But any good magician knows, if you want to stop a wall of water in its tracks, you have to learn the science and adapt, raise the table off the stage and take with it the water too, 10 inches, give or take a few, enough to soak the bone dust fields and keep the carbon underneath concealed. Reconnect the rivers to their natural drains, the old floodplains. Plant trees along the hills like sponges, horizontal hedges, leaky dams, then build higher cedar fences to give our mouths more future tenses. Lead the farmers of our oldest ways to follow the carbon carrot through the Brexit blight to become climate guardians in this fight. Rewind, restore, rewild the rivers. Learn their primeval ways and secret names. For any kid with a bucket of Elvers knows the earth's deep currents can't be tamed. So yes, save our towns, villages and sofas, but first restore the river's song, because trying to control these ancient waters is where we first went wrong. For the summer people never really owned the levels, and now, before the climate tips, we must prove we still belong. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello. So, how does it look? Is it okay? Is it right? Yeah. Thanks. So my name's Francesca, and I'm a poet, and I am in crush, kind of in love with the scientists. I really crave the bewilderment of trying to get my head round how other and amazing and bamboozling the universe is. It gives me a kind of antidote to cynicism and apathy and despair, to find out how miraculous, how wonderful our world is. I don't know if you ever feel like that. So it was a real gift to be part of this project, Hot Poets. I didn't think they would let me in, but they did. And it was actually a real gift to work with the British Geological Survey. So I expected to learn a lot about, and I did, I expected to learn a lot about carbon capture and about geothermal energy, and to go with the scientists and the researchers through the territory of our climate emergency and find maybe a way out of it. What I didn't expect to happen was to feel so much hope. And so I'm going to read you the poem that I wrote with the British Geological Survey, and I hope it might make you feel hopeful too. And just channeling that big dork energy of hot poets, I've called it Geology Rocks. So there you go. I know. Okay. I know you know. This is an emergency, careering towards doom, and we all need immediately to stop everything we keep on doing, and our whole species is a disaster. But I have been talking to geologists, and I do feel calmer. Did you know? Once upon a time, two titans, Avalonia and Laurentia, Hulk smashed together to form the landmass we now call the UK. Leave, remain, everything changes. Way back when, we were all one supercontinent, Pangaea. Glasgow was equatorial, and the Pennines reached higher than the Himalayas, which hundreds of millions of years of weather smushed down to a desert the size of the Sahara, grinding rainforests and swamps to coalfields and peat bogs. We live on a spinning, plate-shifting planet. Did dinosaurs know that ice is a blanket, the sea a rocking cradle? Did you know that currently the North Atlantic grows at the same rate as your fingernails? I know you know that photosynthesis balances this atmosphere, and there's too much carbon dioxide and not enough trees. But science is open source magic. If enough of us believe, we can capture airborne carbon and store it safe beneath the seas for eons, time enough for oceans to fall and forests to rise. I know you know that burning fossil fuels snuffs out species like extinguished suns, so only the memory of them shines in our minds. And we can't stop the juggernaut of our industries, or systems will cave in like collapsed mines. But those collieries, scuppered in the 80s, leaving pit communities cold comfort, are now flooded with groundwater warmed by the Earth's mantle, providing potential green gold mines of local power for thousands of families. I know you know that rivers are running wild and dry, but nature nurtures water underground, drop by tremulous drop. Starry-eyed H2O applauds itself through porous rock. Not even the rain has such soft hands. At any one time, almost all the liquid fresh water in the world is landlocked, can be found. Did you know that wind turbines hold rare earth magnets that are not rare, that are everywhere? Our planet, our home, is our treasure. I know you know that human progress, our viral rise to apex saboteur, has led us here. Perhaps we should fear what we know. While the sun beats down so bright upon catastrophe, let's be unafraid of the dark. Come back down to earth, return to our miraculous, mysterious mineral mother, to whom we all belong. Astronauts know from space reaching out, as geologists know from the core in. We are one sphere, one blue-green living system. We are in an emergency. The words from Latin, a language that is not lost, did not die, has survived, evolved, is daily found in science, in nature, emerging, recycled, repurposed, real. Thank you.